What's good, Fins Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. I'm here today, riding solo dolo. No Jason Taylor to my Zach Thomas, as Dolphin fan is currently occupied, but we're gonna roll with it anyways. Tonight I got a very special guest for all of you. I know the offensive line is a hot topic right now for us, next to the quarterback and what's happening with the secondary. But guys, I got someone who specializes in what we're looking to do with the offensive line. This guy, Matt Valdovinos, I follow him on Twitter at MV Scouting. He's worth the follow. You can catch his articles in Pro Football Network and in various other sites. He's great at what he does. Great insight. He's got a good sense of humor too when it comes down to it. So he's definitely worth the follow. He's definitely worth the time, and he's definitely worth the click when it comes to his articles and what he has to say. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Everyone, please welcome Matt to the show.
Hey, y'all doing? How's everyone doing today?
How you doing, Matt? How's your day going?
I'm always doing good. It's been a great day. Relaxed a little bit today. Didn't have any finals. Didn't have anything going on. So I wrapped up one article, and then that was earlier this morning. Just kind of relaxed the rest of the day.
Plug it, brother. Tell them where they
can read it. It should be coming out. I finished up a little bit early, so it should come out Friday morning. It's my 2021 running backs piece. Earlier yesterday, though, my 2021 NFL draft quarterback pieces came out. I know Dolphins fans just got their quarterbacks of the future, so might not have to check it out, but it's never a bad thing to go, look at the next draft class.
Well, that's actually kind of what I specialize in is the whole quarterback thing. Mm-hmm. And, because I, like you, started out I break down tape as a hobby, you know what I mean? And that led to me, I was on TD Fins Talk, and then it led to me doing this show and stuff. But let me ask you this, since we're talking about quarterbacks, where do you see? I got two questions for you, because I've been on the Trey Lance hype train for months. Okay,
gotcha.
This I know it's been the hot topic over the past week, but I've been on this kid for months now. Okay, in terms of Trey Lance, where do you think he's gonna fit compared to Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence? In that, is he going to be in the top three? And another question I have for you, another guy I've been hyping for months, probably like 7-8 months to the Fin Nation over here, is Jamie Newman when he was at Wake Forest. I got to ask also, what do you expect from him this year at Georgia?
So first with Lance, I think, to me, some people are already dubbing him as, a 2021 quarterback one. Other people don't think there's any chance that he's going to declare for the draft in 2021. I'm a bit in the middle. I do think that he's as good and as a Justin Fields, right? I think they're both, either one has a really good chance of being in that QB2 spot. I think the other one's the obvious QB3, and then there's a drop-off after that. However, more likely than not, it's pretty, in my eyes, unlikely that either of them are going to get up to that Trevor Lawrence space, just how good he is, what he does, because I think he's more polished than either as a passer, and he's almost as good as an athlete, Trevor Lawrence is. But Lance, what you saw, the production that he had at North Dakota State last year as a freshman in his first year starting was really something you've never seen before. He went on and won the Walter Football Award, which is basically the Heisman for the FCS, and no freshman in FCS history had ever won the award. So when people were saying, it's pretty uncommon for an FCS redshirt sophomore to declare, especially for a quarterback, it's pretty uncommon for an FCS freshman to do what Trey Lance did last year. So I think there is a very real chance that he could supplant Justin Fields as the QB2 in 2021. I just don't see him getting onto that Trevor Lawrence, that area. Now for Jamie Newman, he's someone who I've been talking about a lot recently because I think he got a really good landing spot in Georgia when he transferred. They hired Jeff Monken to be the offensive coordinator. He's going to do a lot for Newman's development as a passer. Newman was very willing to push the ball downfield, but he wasn't very nuanced. It was very questionable, some of the things he did at Wake Forest. They didn't really prepare him to be an NFL quarterback. I think Georgia's going to do that. And I also think that Newman for Georgia is going to help their passing offense more than Jake Fromm did. Now, I think he's a little more volatile than Fromm is, right? You'll see them lose a couple more games than they did with Fromm, but I also think that they'll be able to put up more points. And that'll be a big thing for them as well. He's a good athlete. He's got the requisite arm strength. So he's a good prospect. It's just how he puts it all together and functions under Georgia this year will determine how high he can go in 2021.
So do you think he's the fourth quarterback off the board, or do you think it's Brock Purdy or Tanner Morgan?
Currently, if I'm guessing, I would say Brock Purdy probably goes fourth. He has to clean some stuff up too. I have Jamie Newman as QB5 and then Morgan as QB6.
Now, let me ask you this. This is the real question, and then we'll get
Mhm.
into your background and everything. Do you think Sam Howell has potential to be better than Trevor Lawrence when Sam Howell declares?
I don't think so. The 2022 class is really interesting, and as it stands right now, it's probably to me going to be better than either 2020 or 2021. I personally really love Jaden Daniels out of Arizona
So I
State.
love him. He needs some weight, though.
Yeah, that's the big thing at 175, but you see he has an absolute cannon for how
Oh,
light he is. I do think Sam Howell is very good at UNC, but I do question just how much he can develop at UNC. I think Trevor Lawrence in Clemson is given the every opportunity you could want for a quarterback in the NCAA, right? He's going to have access to weapons. He's going to have access to a solid offensive line. He's going to consistently be playing in big time games. Those things you're not going to see from Sam Howell at UNC, unfortunately.
yeah. And Jaden Daniels, he came onto my radar this year in that Oregon game
Mhm.
because I was watching Herbert. I was watching, obviously, because of our situation, I was watching all these guys. And when I saw Jaden Daniels play the way he played, outperform Herbert, and then you understand he's under Herm Edwards, so he's going to
Yep.
be NFL ready. And he got Marv Lewis as one of the he's an advisor for the team too, right? So it just seems like Jaden Daniels has the perfect situation going on right now. And I don't know, I know you watched that game,
Yeah.
but man, he impressed.
Yeah,
Man,
for 175, the ability to push the ball down the field like he does, the velocity he puts on the football, it's only going to get better once he adds weight. If he's in that 200 to 215 pound spot once he's like at the combine in 2 years from now, we're talking about a legitimate, impressive physical specimen because he's so athletic as well and he's lanky. But then you've also got guys like Keaton Slovis at USC. Spencer Rattler didn't even really play last
yeah,
year.
yeah.
And he's going to be under Lincoln O'Reilly for the next 2 years. So the 2021 class, as of right now, looks really good.
Yeah. Okay, so great stuff. Let's get into it. Just can you give everyone a brief background of your history with football? You know, I know you played at the collegiate level, and also what made you get into the film analysis side of the game after you were done playing?
So I grew up in Texas. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. Football was always a big part of my life. My dad played football in high school. He was a big fan. So as early as I remember, I think 6 or 7 is when I started playing football. I was always a bigger kid. Typically, I played on the defensive line up until late middle school, in which I played both defense and offense. And then I moved to Pennsylvania, and I was an offensive lineman first and foremost. And then I rotated in his defensive line just because of how important they put the emphasis on offensive tackle. I played throughout high school. I started every game, sophomore to senior year. Unfortunately, my senior year, I broke my ankle pretty nastily. I broke my tibia and my fibula, ruptured my Achilles, and I tore my syndesmosis joint. So it was a complete separation of the ankle. It was pretty similar to what happened to Alex Smith, except I didn't have the compound fracture. I didn't have the bone separate through my leg, which was lucky if you consider Alex Smith's situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then so through there, I lost half of my senior season. It became very difficult for the recruiting process. I was in a wheelchair for some of it. I was in crutches and a walking boot for the other part. So it became difficult. I ended up trying to walk on at the University of Texas at El Paso, where I'd grown up. They gave me some workouts, fortunately couldn't continue to pass the physical. So from there, I decided trying to find a new spot where I can continue to keep the game of football in my life. And what I ended up doing was I had been writing for a website called Rigo's Rag. It's the Redskins fan site over at Fansided. And I'd done that for a little bit, and I decided to focus on doing that full time. I DM'd this guy named Dalton Miller on Twitter. He ended up becoming my podcast, my co-host for the podcast I do, the Blue Chip Scouting NFL podcast. And from there, I've really kind of started trying to develop this career where I can continue to be around football. I then changed my major in college from just a communications major to sports management. So the hope now is that I'll be able to have a full opening of opportunities, whether it be as a writer, an analyst, or even a coach or an athletic director, or even a personnel. So that's kind of been what I've been doing. And as I lost my football career to injury, it was able to help me open up the rest of my life and still create a career around football despite not being able to play it anymore.
Wow, you really legitimately made something great out of a kind of tragic situation, because that injury, man, I don't know if you saw my face when you were that's about as serious as it comes, and it's amazing to see how you've turned that into such a positive situation. So definitely kudos to you.
Thank you.
When you look at offensive linemen this year, and specifically the draft, let's just start there before we get into the Dolphin stuff. Who do you think, who was your favorite lineman taken fit wise with what team?
In terms of fit and just fit alone, there were two that made a lot of sense to me. The first was Tristan Wirfs to Tampa Bay at 14th overall. Wirfs was my number one rated tackle. I think his physical tools combined with how well developed he was in his nuance and his pass sets was a huge thing for him. And I thought it meant that he had a higher ceiling than some of the other guys. You saw an Andrew Thomas go, was the first tackle taken, who had, I think, maybe the highest floor of any of the players, but he had some athletic limitations. I did wonder just exactly how much better he was going to be able to get in the NFL. I'm not saying he wasn't a great, college player and he won't be a good player in the NFL, but I didn't think he had that kind of all-pro potential that you saw from some of the other guys. Jedrick Wills was taken to the Browns, right? He played a majority right tackle in his career at Alabama, and when he wasn't playing right tackle, he played guard. He had never had any experience at left tackle. Now, that doesn't mean he can't, but the Browns are moving him to left tackle with some inexperience, so that's a little bit of a worry to me. And then Mekhi Becton was my fourth-ranked tackle. I just thought he wasn't overall perfectly ready for the NFL. I thought there were some issues. He goes to the Jets. He's probably going to start day one on Sam Darnold's, blind side. So that is a bit of a concern. I thought Tristan Wirfs getting to play protecting Tom Brady, who's excellent at avoiding sacks, getting to play in an offense that is tailored for pass setting someone so athletic as him, and then a run, a very spread open run system that's going to get him in space, going to let his athleticism take over. That's a really, really, a good fit for Tristan Wirfs. And then the other one for me was an Ezra Cleveland taken by the Vikings in the late second round. The reason I say this is because Cleveland had some major issues in college, being he was very light for someone as big as him. He was about 310 pounds at the combine. I think he probably played a little bit lighter at Boise State. And he was a great athlete, but it meant that he was able to be driven in the backfield a little bit. He sacrificed a bit of power. Someone similar to that coming out of college, it was my pro comp, was a Brian O'Neill out of Pittsburgh. Minnesota took O'Neill, and he's now one of the better right tackles in the NFL because Minnesota did such a good job developing his play strength, helping him develop an anchor, and now he's one of probably the 5 best right tackles in the NFL. So I think if they can do that kind of same thing for Cleveland, they can plug him and play him at left tackle after this year, move Riley Reif to guard, and now their offensive line is one of the stronger parts of their offense, which has been their struggle for years. So I think Tristan Wirfs and Ezra Cleveland are probably my 2 favorite offensive line fits in the NFL draft from this past year.
Did that Josh Jones slide surprise you? Because it
did. Me. I was a big Josh Jones fan. I know some of the issues is because similar to Cleveland, he has issues with power. He can be driven back into the backfield. And at the Senior Bowl, when we were there, he really struggled everywhere but left tackle. He didn't look comfortable at right tackle. He didn't look comfortable at guard. So he's, someone that you have to take him and kind of either play him at left tackle exclusively or spend a lot of time trying to have him grow comfortable, being a right tackle or a guard. So it was kind of concerning to me. I thought that he still wasn't going to fall past the top 50 pick. I thought he could have gone to 18 to the Dolphins. I really liked Jones. I was really, really surprised that he was able to fall so far.
What was it? Yeah. What was your favorite one-on-one battle at the Senior Bowl during the practice?
The defensive Javon Kinlaw feasted at the Senior Bowl. I have all the one-on-one videos on my Twitter. Everyone can go check those out. I post them for everyone to be able to see. I did think that Javon Kinlaw against John Simpson, being a guard from Clemson, did a really, really good job versus Kinlaw in season. Once we got to the Senior Bowl, you saw Kinlaw kind of take a little bit of revenge and absolutely demolished him. It was relatively impressive.
I got to ask you too, we were talking about 2021 a bit there. What are your thoughts of Penei Sewell?
I think he's the best offensive tackle to come out since 2008, probably. So I started scouting in 2017. He's comfortably the best offensive tackle I've seen, and it's not close.
Yeah, I started looking at him at 2018, and I've been telling people he's one of the best I've ever seen. So
yeah.
So okay, but when you go beyond Penei, who's your next best lineman next year? And you can go interior. Is it Humphrey? Is it Little? Is it Cosme? Who is it?
So my second-ranked offensive tackle right now is actually Jackson Carman, the Clemson offensive tackle. He's the Clemson left tackle. Big dude, good athlete, very, very nasty. Had some up and down reps last year, but I think you really see the physical tools that you want to see, and you see the kind of identity, I'm going to take this dude that's in front of me and I'm going to drive him into the ground for everyone to see. I really, really love that. I think it's something Sewell does. So Jackson Carman is currently my number 2 offensive tackle. And then for the interior, Creed's very good. There's someone that not everyone knows, not a lot of people talk about yet, but they will. Tyler Lindenbaum out of Iowa. He's the Iowa center. To me, he's better than Creed Humphrey right now. He's also younger. Very, very dominant player at the point of attack. Half of his reps, you see him driving someone 15 yards down the field. He's very comfortable in pass protection. And Iowa's line did struggle a little bit, specifically with the guard play, but he was a rock all year, which was huge. So he's someone who else I'm also very, very interested in seeing.
So a lot of people this year, when we're talking about interior, were surprised. Another slide. Well, people watched, at the beginning of the season to the end of the season pre-draft process, they watched Biotish fall behind, Matt Hennessy, even Lloyd Cushenberry, and Cesar Ruiz. Why can you just explain? Because we have a lot of Dolphin fans who are really high on Biotish. So can you just explain why he he went from number 1 to like the number 4 center? So into the draft,
he struggled throughout his last season. So honestly, had he declared for the draft last year, he's probably a top 50 pick, if not a first rounder. So seeing him, he went back for his senior season. He struggled with injury for a lot of the year. And then there were some games, unfortunately, with an offensive lineman. If an offensive lineman beats a defensive lineman 48 out of 50 times, that's still not a good game because you gave up those 2 bad plays. And that's how people are always going to look at it. Biadasz unfortunately just had more of those bad plays a little more consistently than what people were used to. I still think it let him fall a lot further than it should have. He was still, to me, someone that I'm taking in the 2nd or 3rd round because he's shown to be a phenomenal player on tape. He has that 2018 tape that was so good. Last year, he struggled a little bit. He struggled with power and with anchor mostly, which was kind of an issue. And you could see it in a lower leg injury, which is a bit upsetting. But him being able to fall all the way down to like the 4th or 5th round, wherever he fell, was kind of insane to me. So I do think that's kind of what happened. The injury thing really kind of just nagged at him all year. You saw the same thing with the Lucas Niang at a TCU. He had a hip injury. He had an injury thing for the entirety of the year. I thought Niang was probably a late first round talent to me, and he fell all the way to like the 2nd to last pick in the 3rd round.
What do you think he's going to be okay in terms of?
Yeah, I think he should be fine. I really hate his landing spot because he played right tackle all 4 years at TCU. And now he's in Kansas City, where Mitchell Schwartz is entrenched as the right tackle for this foreseeable future. But to me, if the plan was to move Jedrick Wills and Tristan Wirfs to left tackle, like they're going to be now, that makes Lucas Niang the best pure right tackle in the draft to me. So I was really, really surprised. Now, I understand that with the COVID-19 stuff, these teams weren't able to meet with the prospects. They weren't able to have their doctors clear these injuries. So it was very difficult to gauge where the actual value for some of these players are. And I wouldn't be surprised if a number of teams had Niang just completely off of their board just because they didn't want to risk any potential screw-ups with the injury. But I think the value there was just too good to pass up for like a team like the Chiefs.
So who was the steal of the draft when it comes to the offensive line to you?
It has to be Prince Tega Wanogho out of Auburn. The Eagles got him in the late 2nd, like pick 200 something, I believe. PTW was a guy that I think I had as my OT7. Super, super talented, a little raw and a little unrefined, but long, really good athlete, very nasty, strong at the point of attack. And he showed the ability, his functional athleticism showed that he could be a competent pass protector. He did have injuries, a couple of them throughout his career at Auburn. And again, I think because of all this stuff, because teams weren't able to meet with him and weren't able to clear these injuries, that he may have fallen more than he should have.
I agree. I was really high on that kid, but even going back to Niang, and when I did my big board, I basically said he has the potential to be one of the best tackles in this draft when it's all said and done if the fit was right. But, when you go down to the fit right there, you're 110% right. So,
and honestly, I think the Dolphins were probably the best fit for him. For Niang, I had talked about this constantly because Tua, especially because they decided to go with Tua, because he's a left-handed quarterback, that means that your right tackle essentially serves as the left tackle. He's the blindside protector. Niang fits that perfectly. He was so competent in pass protection. He gave up like 1 sack in his career. Very, very consistent. He might not be a phenomenal athlete, but he's good enough and he's a strong run blocker. To me, it made a ton of sense for the Dolphins to go out and get someone like him.
You know what, Matt? I'm not even going to I know everyone has their moment in the draft, and not taking a safety higher aside, I was one of the people that when San Francisco traded back 1 pick, and I believe they gave up the 117th and the 15th, I was like, why aren't we giving the 18th and the 70th to move up and just secure Tristan Wirfs. Because I, like you, he was my OT1 this year. And I, like you, probably, again, another guy 7-8 months ago on TD Finn's talk, I was going off about this kid because, I have a close personal friend. He played football at a pretty high level, and he went and he saw Iowa this year. He actually went to watch AJ Epinesa, and he came back and he said, he basically said to me, I came away. He's like, I went to go watch AJ Epinesa, and I came away, and all I could talk about was Tristan Wirfs. And, the kid's just a freak, man. Like, do you see a right tackle as good as Tristan Wirfs next year?
Maybe. I think this year's right tackle class was loaded because you had like a Jedrick Wills, a Tristan Wirfs, a Lucas Niang. A lot of you don't commonly see that. It's very often the best lineman from a team is going to come from that left side, but sometimes with Alabama, Jedrick Wills played right tackle because Tua was left-handed, right? Tristan Wirfs played right tackle because Alaric Jackson is a good player at Iowa, their left tackle, and he's been playing left tackle for a while now. He's just comfortable there. So they just asked Tristan Wirfs to play right tackle. There's always going to be – next year, I'm not so sure about the right tackle class. A lot of the top guys play left tackle. Off the top of my head, I can't even think of any of the – oh, you know what? That's actually not true. Washington State has a guy. His name's Abraham Lucas. He's my OT3, actually. I didn't even think about this. He played right tackle primarily. I don't know if they're going to switch it up with a new head coach, though. But he played right tackle next year. He's excellent. A little lean, but super athletic, very, very long. Someone that I'm a huge, huge fan of. And I think with that Mike Leach system, you already know what he is as a pass protector. You already know that that's what his bread and butter is going to be. We're going to need to see him this year develop a little bit as a run blocker. But if it's a team like the Dolphins, and that's usually what you ask for from your right tackle, but a team like the Dolphins, where the right tackle is essentially filling that left tackle role, then an Abraham Lucas would make a lot of sense there.
And I got a question for you, just going back, as you mentioned it earlier. Another guy who I was obviously high on because I just knew we were going to. When Greer said the tape tells us who a player is, I said, if he's watched the Auburn game, the Cal game of Herbert, it's a wrap, okay? Like it's Tua, you know what I mean? So another guy I was high on was Jedrick Wills, but not only because of the talent, but because of the camaraderie you would have between the quarterback. Can you just say, first of all, were you as confused by the pick that I was after they just spent all that money on Conklin? And second of all, do you think that probably would have been the best fit overall at right tackle for the foreseeable future because of their actual personal relationship beyond the talent and stuff like that?
Potentially. I think for the Browns pick, I wasn't super confused. To me, it was just take the best tackle available, pair him with Conklin, whoever's more comfortable at left tackle, play left tackle, and then the other one at right tackle, right? That's not a huge issue to me. I didn't think you were going to reach for a Mekhi Becton and put him, because to me, it would have made, if you're taking Mekhi Becton over Jedrick Wills, because Becton had a year over Wills as a left tackle, to me, that doesn't make sense. I just want to take the better player. I think that's what the Browns did. They took who they thought was the best overall tackle. And to my knowledge, they'll be placing Wills at left tackle. I don't have any reason to believe he can't play left tackle. It's just whether or not they're going to put Conklin there. That one we'll wait to be seen.
So you don't buy the guard hype for
no, not at all. Not at all. Their needed left tackle still massive.
So what's your thoughts of Austin Jackson at 18?
So I understand the thought process of taking an Austin Jackson here, right? High upside player. He dealt with injuries here with the bone marrow donation, and you can kind of see him struggle a little bit on film. The issue with me is I did think it was a bit of a reach in terms of who else was still available on the board. I had Jackson lower than some of the guys, like Josh Jones fell all the way to the third round. I also had an Ezra Cleveland higher than Austin Jackson. Now, looking at it now, obviously the NFL didn't agree with me as Jackson went 18th and Josh Jones and Ezra Cleveland went late second and early third, respectively. We're not going to know who's right until then. Austin Jackson, with the high upside, the high athletic ability, you're looking at Brian Flores, and he decided that, and you can see it throughout the majority of this draft class and even some of what they did last year, is they're going to take the high upside players and they're going to trust their player development to be able to take what these tools have and be able to turn them into a great player. So while I was lower on Jackson than the rest, I can understand the thought process of taking him over someone like a Jones or a Cleveland.
And what were your thoughts of Robert Hunt at 39?
So initially, I really, really liked the pick because I thought Robert Hunt was a very nasty tone setter. He's something, I think the Dolphins are going to want to run the football a little more. They went out, got Jordan Howard. They traded for Matt Breida, which I think were both really, really smart moves. So to me, it made a lot of sense. He's very natural. He's very powerful at the point in time. And I think some of his limitations in pass protection could have been masked if he was being moved to guard. Recently, Chris Greer came out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or if some other news has come out recently, but their intention is to play him at right tackle first.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
To me, this doesn't make a lot of sense because, as we've talked about, there were someone like Lucas Niang that if you wanted to take a right tackle, I would have taken someone who I feel more comfortable and is just a better overall right tackle. I could understand the thought process that maybe the Dolphins thought Hunt was a better overall player, and I could subscribe to that thought process if we're talking about Robert Hunt, the interior offensive lineman, the guard, not Robert Hunt, the offensive tackle. To me, it's very, very puzzling that they think Robert Hunt would be a better right tackle than a Lucas Niang. Now, some might say, okay, well, the injuries might have scared them off, and he played poorly. I wouldn't say poorly. He played less than he expected with the hip injury. But with that, then you also say that they took Austin Jackson at 18, who also played poorly due to a lower leg injury due to the bone marrow. So there's a lot of questions there. And so that was my big concern. I think overall, if you're going Robert Hunt this year, play him right tackle, if that doesn't work out, you can move him into guard. You can go get another tackle next year. It's not the end of the world. But he's not competent enough in pass protection. He's not consistent enough that I would feel comfortable keeping him as Tua's blindside, especially with the Tua injury history, especially that was the major red flag, right? If Tua never had any injury history, we're talking about him potentially being the first overall pick. But the injuries were so consistent, and it's such a big red flag that he was able to fall to 5. The Dolphins didn't have to trade up to get him. And yes, he's a great talent, but there is a reason that he fell so far. And so with a Robert Hunt, I just don't see the consistency in pass protection that I feel comfortable letting him block for Tua on the blind side. That's my only concern. I do think he could be a very good player, and I think he's going to be excellent for the attitude of the team. I think he's very nasty, a run blocking mauler. That's not something you saw in a lot of Austin Jackson tape, so that's going to be really good as well. But in a perfect world, if they were going to take Hunt here, I would have just doubled down and taken a Lucas Niang and moved Hunt into guard.
Bro, yeah, I mean, you're speaking the truth and you're preaching to the choir over here, man. That's why I would have been, the jury is still out for me on the Brandon Jones pick at 70. With Terrell Burgess and Kevon Wallace and a guy who I've been telling everyone, sleeper Geno Stone, still on the board. I'm taking those guys before I'm taking Brandon Jones. That's why, to me, packaging that 70th with that 18th and just getting Tristan Wirfs at 13, would that really have been such a, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
it would have made a lot more sense to me. I agree. And I think if we're looking at that, so I was not a major fan of a lot of the Dolphins' earlier picks. I think they did a really good job on day 3. I thought they did a phenomenal job. And at the end of the day, with the Dolphins, this class is very, very much going to be defined by the success of Tua Tagovailoa in the NFL, right? If he's a franchise-changing quarterback, wins them Super Bowls as a Hall of Famer, no one's going to care about the rest of the picks, right? All of them could be misses, and they're still going to look and say, hey, we got Tua at 5, and we didn't trade in capital, and he won us a bunch of Super Bowls. Cool. If he struggles, even though the rest of the draft class is really, really good, if Tua isn't the answer, then it's going to be like, well, at number 5, you took Tua, and he was a bust. Draft class isn't good. So unfortunately, that is the pain of taking a quarterback so early. But with the 18th and 30th pick, I would have done, there were ways that I think they could have invested into a little more efficiently than what they did. I think, to me, the picks are very, very, it's a lot of gambling on the development of Austin Jackson, on Robert Hunt being able to improve his consistency and pass protection. And to me, with a quarterback like Tua, I'm not gambling. I would have just made the safe pick.
See, and just like you, when we were doing the live stream on the draft reaction, when they took Robert Hunt, I started basically giving my analysis of the pick with him as a guard.
Yeah.
I didn't give the analysis with him as a tackle because I don't know if you heard, but basically the word was that we were planning to take Cesar Ruiz with 26. And when the Saints kind of went off the board and took him, that's why we traded back to 30 and Big Benogany was our next best player on the board. But I felt like once I understood, that's why I thought the Robert Hunt pick was guard, because I really felt they were going to stick
yeah.
Harris at center and kick Ruiz out to right guard probably this season, right? So that's why I was like, okay, they're taking their guard. They missed out on Ruiz. They're taking their guard at 39. But, you know, can I ask you this? Do you think Jesse Davis could just beat him out in camp at right tackle?
Maybe. I think, honestly, I would be more worried that a Julian Davenport beats out an Austin Jackson, just because I think Davenport's experience in the NFL and Jackson's rawness coming out of college might play into that a little bit. I would imagine that Austin Jackson eventually supplants him. Now, these guys do have one thing that I've learned recently, specifically last year, that I hadn't taken into account, was that teams really, really value a player based on the draft capital they put into the player, right? So if they take someone in the first round, there's a very strong chance that he's going to be starting round one. Now, sometimes you don't see this with a team like the Redskins. Maybe the coach doesn't sign off on the pick. But to me, I mean, I imagine that Brian Flores and Chris Greer were working hand in hand to make each selection. That's what it looked like. That's what I imagined it was like. And that's how I see the Dolphins working as a franchise, right? Because Brian Flores showed so much last year as a coach. Now, I would imagine that both these guys are probably starting day one just because they were given so much draft capital. But even if Robert Hunt doesn't win the starting right tackle job, I think that just means you play him at guard, right? Which might end up being the better thing anyways.
Like we were talking before we went live, and we were talking about Sadiq Charles, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I would have trusted him more at left tackle on day one than Austin Jackson right now.
Yeah, I would too. I thought that Sadiq – so I had Charles as my OT 11. Okay. And we're talking about even like a Prince Tega Winogo, who went in the 6th round late.
I would trust him more than an Austin Jackson.
Yeah. I would have taken a Jack Driscoll out of Auburn to be my right tackle as well. Like there were a lot of options. And that was my biggest concern with the Dolphins draft, was just I understand the thought process of the players they've taken, and they're really, really betting on the coaching staff and Coach Brian Flores to be able to develop these players and these talents, when I thought that there were just better players on the board.
Yeah. Oh, and so, you know, you're talking about day 3 a little bit briefly, and I think we can all agree, you know, we made the Breida trade, which we got the best running back on day 3,
Mm-hmm.
you know, next to probably Joshua Kelly from UCLA. But what do you think about the Solomon Kinley trade up and selection, and also with Eric Flowers being signed and our left guard, and Solomon Kinley's basically a left guard?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see us transitioning him to right guard?
I think either or. I don't think guard has the same discrepancy on either side as tackle does.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very similar. You're not moving your body as extreme in the same or in the opposite direction as you are in tackle. So I think that's okay. I think either one probably starts. I mean, I think they both, I would imagine, start day one, right? The Dolphins needed a full overhaul on that offensive line from last year. And they really did that with some of their, you know, the people they brought in. I thought Eric Flowers was a good signing, a little overpaid, but you got to pay for the players you want to bring in. He's going to be a quality starter for them. And he's going to be a veteran, right? He's going to be a guy who, hey, this is what we're going to do. And honestly, a lot of people thought that Eric Flowers was overdrafted, that he was a lot of, you know, physical traits, but he wasn't real nuanced. He wasn't ready to be in the NFL. So maybe he, as someone who, you know, had a poor start to his career, but has really made a good living for himself over the past year, can help Austin Jackson develop as well. And that'll be a big thing. So I do think that I would imagine Eric Flowers starts on the left side, but I think Solomon Kinley will compete for that right guard spot.
What do you think of Solomon Kinley as a prospect?
I think he's a good player. Taken a little bit early in that 4th round, I wouldn't have traded up for him, but I do think that he's a good. I mean, he's a high floor starter. He's a mover of people. He's a big, big dude. So he's kind of just. I think you very much saw that in the draft and the free agency. The Dolphins are going to want to move people off the line of scrimmage and run the football. The duo, as I mentioned earlier, of Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, are absolutely going to assist with this, and all of the people that they did are really, really going to help with this.
Do you think we're going with a bully culture on that offensive line a little bit?
I would imagine maybe not a Richie Incognito type of bully culture, but a, you know, they want to get nastier. I mean, Brian Flores comes from New England. He's wanting big dudes. He wants dudes that are going to get really, really nasty. So I do think that that's kind of what they're going to look to do, especially if Ryan Fitzpatrick starts this first year, right, and Tua's not, you know, going to come in until sophomore, until the second half of his rookie year. I do imagine that they're going to want to establish an identity running the football and playing solid defense. And you saw that with not just on the offensive line, but you saw that with the pick at Raekwon Davis, where I thought that there were a number of defensive linemen who I preferred, Justin Madubuike and Davon Hamilton. Neither were the run defender or the consistent player that Raekwon Davis was. So I do think that they're just going to try and stop the trenches. They're going to play from the ground up. They're going to run the football. They're going to stop the run, and then everything else is going to kind of fall into place. I think that's what they're looking to do now, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. They're trying to set the foundation of a quality football team and then become great from there.
Speaking of, just briefly, we'll touch on this because it's a pick that me and my co-host are actually really excited about. It's because we see a ton of upside, and I don't know, man. We just see a lot of parallels with coming out with Chris Jones. Raekwon Davis, he had his sophomore season where he had 10.5 sacks, right? If he can get back to that pass rusher, at the next level. I mean, you saw Flores. He said he was swatting flies, but he's clearly doing a fist pump. What do you think about Raekwon Davis in terms of at the next level, and what's your projection on him?
So I'm not nearly as high on Raekwon Davis as Brian Flores was, right? I thought that, to me, Davis was a guy who was very one-dimensional. Yeah, he had that pass rush production very early in his career. And there was a reason that the summer after that season, a lot of us in the draft community talked about him as like a top 15 player, right? Just show us that again, and you're going to be selected in the top 15. Well, the pass rush production really fell off of a cliff after that at Alabama, and he became a very, very one-dimensional, great run defender, but really didn't provide any push from the pocket. It looked like he lost some of his dynamic ability. Obviously, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not in the room. I'm not sure what went on, but to me, it was just a lot of, how do we go from here? What are you going to do? So if they can access that pass rusher from again, then it's an excellent pick. But if he just ends up being the person he was his last 2 years at Alabama, just a quality run defender, that's not someone you take with a 3rd-round pick, right? I'm taking an interior pass rusher, or was it a 2nd-round pick, right?
Yeah, 56.
It was, yes. So, I mean, if I'm taking an interior defensive lineman, I'm taking someone who I think has pass rush production, someone who I think can give me 8 to 10 sacks in a year. And I thought there were people on the board like a Justin Madubuike who has, noticeably higher upside than a Raekwon Davis, but is nowhere near the consistent player or the run defender. So it was very much pick your poison. And honestly, this is a very Brian Flores pick, right? It screams the New England Patriots. Now it's just, can they access that pass rusher that we've seen from him, but has not been here for a while?
Where do you see him fitting in the 3-4 across the front three?
He played a lot of nose tackle at Alabama, which I didn't like, right? I don't think that's what he's meant. I think he's perfectly suited to be a 5-tech. He's got the length. That's where I would imagine him and Christian Wilkins will make a very quality, interior rush duo. It's just putting them in the correct spot. So I think that is where he's going to use. You could play him as the nose tackle on rundowns because he's such a great run defender. And he's so long, he's able to avoid getting trapped and getting those double teams. But ideally, in a pass rush situation, you're not going to have him there because he's just not going to produce.
What do you think about sticking Benito Jones in between them?
You could. I think Jones isn't quite nearly the player that Davis is in terms of a run defender, and that's kind of what I want in my nose tackle from a 3-4. That's the entire point of that player, right? It's very dependent. It's a very young and raw defensive line, so there are going to be missteps. But I think kind of playing all 3 of them at all 3 spots and letting them start to figure out where to play, that'll be the big thing.
Do you think I just got to, before we get back into the offensive line, do you think we missed out? Because I kind of think we did. Do you think we missed out on getting one of those top safeties when we had the chance and they were on the board?
So I think the Brandon Jones pick is a good supplement to losing Rashad Jones, right? I think he can do similar stuff, but I think he's limited. To me, like a Noah Igbenogany, I didn't like that pick much because I think he's best suited to be a boundary cornerback, and he's essentially going to be the slot. So even if you were going to play him at the slot, I thought Jeff Gladney, who went the pick after, was just a better slot corner anyways, if that's what you were going for. Or if you're sitting at 30, I probably would have looked at one of the safeties. I thought Xavier McKinney was a perfect fit there. Would have made a ton of sense to me. I thought that's where they were going to go, or I even thought they might have taken to DeAndre Swift. Regardless, to me, I don't think it's the end of the world, right? They followed their board. They got who they thought were the best player. But I do think that after the top 4 safeties, to me, after a McKinney, Winfield, Delpit, or Ashton Davis, there was a bit of a drop off in my eyes. Jeremy Chin was kind of up there too, but it was kind of hard to separate him between the other guys. Did they miss out? I mean, no, they took players that they thought were better, but what would I have done? I probably would have taken the safety over there at 30th.
Yeah, the feeling is, we hired the Cal DB coach, Gerald Alexander, and we brought him over as our secondary, and the feeling was that's who we were sitting on at 70, and then Gase took him at 68, right? So,
I mean, I know the Redskins are super interested in Davis at 66 as well. There were a lot
I love that kid, man.
There was a lot. That was like the sweet spot for him, is that mid to late 60s.
Yeah, I love that. I think that kid, man, his sideline to sideline speed is next level, man.
And honestly, I hate the landing spot with the Jets as well, because they already have a quality safety duo in Jamal Adams and Marcus May. So it'll be a weird spot trying to find playing time for him. But I mean, great players see the field, so it'll be interesting.
So you saw, besides watching tape, just by watching him as a fan, you saw a lot of Eric Flowers. So can you just describe to people with what we're getting in that signing, aside from, I think we all know we paid a little bit too much at $10 million per, but what are we getting in terms of a player?
I mean, he's a high energy guy, right? That's kind of what you saw. He had a real revitalization to his career with the Redskins. Moving into guard was really good for him. It lets him showcase his natural power and his push off the point of attack. And if you look at it, I mean, this is a guy who is going up against Fletcher Cox twice a year, right? Like, this is a guy who was holding his own against some of the better defensive lines in the country, or in the NFL, and he had a good year. And he was one of the most consistent players on that Redskins offensive line due to Trent Williams holding out. Brandon Scherf struggled with a little bit of injury history. Morgan Moses was terrible. So Eric Flowers kind of coming in was really a saving grace for a lot of people who thought, it was just a joke that he had another starting spot. Moved in, showcased great power. Being under Bill Callahan, he ended up becoming a little bit better coached. So I think he's a guy who you're going to get. He's going to be a quality player, but he's not going to be, an all-pro guard. He's not going to be, maybe he does live out that $10 million a year contract, but I don't think he's going to be much better than that.
I mean, we were talking about where all these guys fit in, because you can see all of a sudden our offensive trenches are getting a little stuffed. I don't know if you've watched anything on him, but where do you think a guy like Michael Dieter fits in? Like, do we shift him to center? Like, where's he fitting in, do you think?
For Michael Dieter at Wisconsin, I wasn't a huge fan. I think he is probably best suited just as a guard. My guess is he'll probably just either he'll compete for the right guard spot opposite of Flowers, with a Solomon Kinley, right? I don't think there's a major discrepancy between the two of them. But my guess is best case scenario is he's probably he's going to play in that depth scenario for both of them as almost like a swing guard type of a role piece.
Gotcha. And what do you think about Ted Karras being our starting center this year?
I think it's okay, right? I think there are worse centers in the NFL. Overall, like I said, Miami just needed kind of an overhaul on the offensive line. I think with better pieces around him, he can be a quality NFL center. Probably going to be in that 15 to 25 range. Best case scenario, you get a top 15 center. Worst case scenario, he's a guy you look to improve on next year.
So, yeah, that could definitely become a priority next year, right?
It could. Again, I think the big thing will be how this offensive line blends in together, how they're able to play together. Because, again, you're bringing in new pieces everywhere. So being able to find a way for them to click and play together, that's going to be huge.
Do you expect a lot of growing pains from this group in year one?
Yeah, I mean, naturally. They're all so young. They've all got a lot of inexperience. And even Eric Flowers has 1 year at guard, right? So they're even your most experienced guys are still kind of learning what they're doing. Austin Jackson's very raw. Robert Hunt's a little raw as a tackle prospect in terms of his, pass protection ability. So it'll be interesting to see. There are going to be lumps, but there'll also be moments of, maybe you're playing the Patriots and Jordan Howard and Matt Breida combined for 250 rushing yards, right? That's a thing as well that I could see happening with this line. So there are going to be growing pains, but there are going to be bright spots, there are going to be low spots.
So just going back to Dieter for a sec, do you think he doesn't have the physical profile to fit at center? Is that where you're at with him?
Mean, he potentially could. I don't know that he has. That's just dependent. I know center is a very, very nuanced position. It's hard to just pick it up. The ability to snap the ball and then take on a defensive lineman is not something that everyone can do. So could he do it? Potentially. It's just that I know commonly it's easier for a center to play guard than it is a guard to play center.
Okay, gotcha. And do you think a guy like Shaq Calhoun gets lost in the mix with all the bodies we're adding here?
I liked Shaq a bit coming out. I think he could vie for. I mean, again, I think that right guard spot, unless they move Flowers to guard, I think the spot opposite of Eric Flowers is really open to anyone. Whoever comes out of camp the best is going to be the person playing.
Okay, so let's just stick to tackle. When you're looking at a tackle, just for the people watching right now, what are some of the key traits you look for if you're going to be drafting a tackle in the first round or high in the first round? What are some of the key boxes that they need to check off?
Well, first thing for me is just functional athletic ability, the ability that even if your feet aren't good, I really don't care about length. That's not a big thing to me. It's just I need you to be able to stay in between your quarterback and the defender, right? That's the big thing. Following that up is then technique. I want to make sure you're well coached. I want to know that your feet are clean and your hand placement is excellent, because hand placement is so big in the NFL. You'll see that if you're outside just a couple inches, you'll get called for a hold, right? If you're outside just too much, your hands are going to get swatted away. You're going to get driven to the backfield. So that's a huge thing to me. And then your feet placement as well, how far you're taking your steps, your ability to recover. You saw Jedrick Wills, that was something he was really, really good at, was his ability to pass pro. And if he had a counter, someone cut inside, his ability to recover and start sliding inward was excellent. It was second to none. And then after that, I want to see a nasty mentality, right? I want to see someone like running the ball. Run blocking is fine, right? As if someone's just a good run blocker, that's whatever. But what separates someone between a great player and a dominant player is the ability to take a man in front of you and shove them into the ground with millions of people watching. That's what separates me. So, and not all people do that, right? Trent Williams has really never been known to that. Joe Thomas never really did that. And those are two of the players that I think. And actually, I should have mentioned this first. Above all else is going to be consistency, right? That's huge. You're down to down because, as I said earlier, if you have 100 pass pro snaps and you give up a sack on 3 of them, you still lost the game.
So when you're talking, because me too, like the violent, like, play violent, you know what I mean? Like that mean streak. Austin Jackson doesn't have that.
He doesn't. And you know what?
He's kind of soft, Matt.
USC didn't run behind him a ton either, which was a little bit of a precursor. Again, I was not a big fan of Austin Jackson coming out. I understand the thought process behind the picks, the upside. That's really what you're building on. But to me, I mean, there were some concerns. And it's more pressing at guard than at tackle. But you saw, and it was honestly something I had a big issue with Tristan Wirfs 2 years ago. So his sophomore tape coming into the year in the summer scouting, I didn't like Tristan Wirfs nearly as much because the top 2 guys, because Jedrick Wills hadn't played a lot of tackle yet, the top 2 guys were Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs. Those were OT1 and OT2. It's just depending on what order you had it. To me, Andrew Thomas is a lot more consistent as a run blocker. He showed the effort. Now, the nastiness thing, yes, I like seeing people be nasty, but more so in depth is just the consistency and the effort, the motor. As long as you're staying on your block, that's the big thing. And that's where Trent Williams, Joe Thomas, Tyron Smith, Goats, guys like that, they're not dominating, right? They're not shoving people into the ground constantly, but they're on their blocks for the entirety of the play. Sometimes you don't get that. A guy like Mekhi Becton, a lot of people call him real nasty. He would shove a guy into the ground, but then that's all he would do, right? He wouldn't go look for more work. He wouldn't latch onto a guy and continue blocking them throughout a whistle. It was just one big punch. They might go onto the ground, but then that's kind of all he did. So while he might seem kind of nasty, he doesn't have that effort, that next level of consistency, continuing to drive someone throughout the play. So that's where it kind of comes in. I don't think you see that from Austin Jackson as well. He's kind of just get in the way of the person, but not necessarily moving them. And that was my only concern.
So I got a question for you.
Robert Hunt is nasty, right?
That's the difference. He's a bully.
That's the difference.
He's a bully, right? Like that's the one thing I can say about him. And if I remember correctly, he graded out fairly high before that groin injury, right? At right tackle. I'm pretty sure by PFF standards, he was one of the higher right tackles.
Now you look at playing at Louisiana, the level of competition was a little bit.
Do you think that played a factor in Josh Jones because he went to Houston? Like if he would have done what he did in the SEC, don't you think he would have went higher? Because
absolutely. And you talk about that for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, even a guy like Josh Jones in 5 years at Houston had 5 different offensive line coaches.
Yeah.
Like, that is horrible for a player. You don't have any level of consistency. So going somewhere, Robert Hunt didn't really have to deal with that as much. But there is that, I think Robert Hunt, the injury was a bit of a concern, but I think he always just profiled as a guard over a tackle.
So if you got a left-handed quarterback, this is kind of what I've been saying. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a left-handed quarterback like Tua, right? You kind of want someone.
Which is only the Dolphins, right?
Really, obviously. You want your left tackle. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is my theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want my left tackle. I want them to be excellent in run blocking, and I want them to be a competent or a more than competent pass blocker because of the oncoming traffic can see, right?
Yeah.
And I want my excellent run support guy and my excellent pass blocking guy. I want that on the right. Am I wrong?
I mean, yeah, ideally, if you're looking at it, it's just how you would typically look at a left tackle and a right tackle on a normal NFL team. You're just swapping that for a team with the left-handed quarterback, which is the Dolphins and Tua. And at the end of the day, if my best run blocker also happens to be my best pass protector, regardless, I would like them on the blind side for Tua. Okay. That's just how I see it. To me, yes, it would make more sense to put Austin Jackson on the right tackle and Robert Hunt on the left tackle spot. An idea, if you want Jackson to develop as this, all these tools, the thought process that he could be an all-pro. The issue is Robert Hunt played so much right tackle in his time. And Austin Jackson has only played left tackle, and even then he's not well developed for it. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. That's why I thought a Lucas Niang, a Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Wills was the best case scenario for the Dolphins because they were already right tackles. They were already, they feel comfortable there. They were dominant there. You just plug it and play it, and it continues in the NFL. At least that's what your hope would be.
Because, if a guy who's drafted 18th overall works out, and he's your left tackle, and you got a left-handed quarterback, you're going to be paying your left tackle and your right tackle a lot of money if you also hit on the right tackle. So that's just where I'm at with that. Have you had a chance to watch tape on some of the UDFAs?
It depends, right? Some of the guys that I had graded as draftable may have fallen in the UDFA. It's just who we're talking about. Just like
Donnell Stanley from South Carolina, Nick Kaltemeyer from Kansas State, and Jonathan Hubbard from Northwestern.
Hubbard's the only one I went in depth with because I was a Big Ten guy.
What do you think of him?
Super nasty player. I think he has a good chance to stick as a UDFA, which is good. I think his profile's a little bit similar to Robert Hunt. I thought he was a good value late. I think he has the requisite frame to play in the NFL as well, which was huge. Does have some development to come, but I do think he has a good chance of sticking on the roster.
Okay. And he played left tackle, right? So, that'll be another battle.
I believe so.
That'll be another battle for – so you would legitimately think Julian Davenport has a chance at left tackle with Austin Jackson? I think how raw Austin Jackson is.
Yeah, I think now in terms of what player's better right now, I think that's a battle. Now, if they just want to roll with Austin Jackson because his ceiling is so tremendously higher, he's younger, right? He's still like 20, I believe. And he's raw and they just want to give him that playing time. I would understand just deciding day one Austin Jackson is the tackle. But if they are, if Brian Flores comes out and say, hey, if you're the better football player, you're going to get to start, then I think Julian Davenport does have a chance because I think as of right now, there is a possibility that Julian Davenport's the better football player.
If you're the coach of this unit, right? You're the offensive line coach, and the plan is, okay, if we get Fitztragic or if Fitzpatrick gets hurt this year, we're going to stick in Josh Rosen or Jake Ruddock, whoever wins that out, or unless they move on from Josh Rosen. And the idea going forward is 2021 is when we play Tua. And the idea is, okay, let's try Austin Jackson, our right tackle. Again, wouldn't this year be kind of the best year to do that because that's the oncoming traffic for Fitzpatrick?
If I'm in charge and I know that we're not playing Tua in 2020 at all.
Yep.
I would probably play Austin Jackson at left tackle or at right tackle. I would play Robert Hunt at guard. Now, obviously, they don't want to do that, so then I would play Robert Hunt wherever. But that's what I would try and do just because we invested so much draft capital in him and the expectation. And I can admit that he does have upside. Now, that being said, a lot of people take it that because he was picked 18, he has like all pro upside. I don't think that his upside is much higher than that of a Ezra Cleveland, a Josh Jones, or a Sadiq Charles, who were 3 of the next high profile tackles taken, right? I don't think it's so much more so that the pick was warranted over those 3. But because I'm, if I'm the offensive line coach and I go, okay, I can work through the lumps and we don't have to worry about Tua getting hurt, I would play him a right tackle and we would start working like that.
Man, listening to you, Matt, like another guy I've been banging the table for if we missed out on worse. I told everyone, hey, if we go with our left tackle or we don't get a right tackle in the first, we can get Lucas Niang in the second.
Yeah, that would have been huge.
And listening to you talk about him, just like you don't understand the pain it causes me in my heart, brother. Because like I look at that guy and I'm like, man, that guy is going to go in the second, third round, and he had Pro Bowl. He has like a Pro Bowl ceiling to me, man.
Yeah, a healthy Lucas Niang was probably the 5th best tackle in this class to me.
Oh, so when you got veterans like Karras and Flowers, who haven't really come from RPO schemes, what's the learning curve going to be for those veterans? Because Chan Gailey is going to be, implementing RPO heavily, and that's another reason why I was telling people, if Tua's there at 5, order your jersey, because I'm telling you, don't take away from a trait that no one's talking about how well he runs the RPO. And now the talk for the last week is, hey, we're going to be running a lot of RPO. So what's the learning curve for veterans like Flowers and Karras, just for that becoming a little bit more of a heavy scheme based on that?
I don't think RPOs are typically too difficult, too complicated, specifically for the linemen. The only thing that they have to watch for is you can't. There's a certain threshold. It's about 3 yards down the line, upfield. Is on an RPO you can't get that far, else you're going to get flagged. So that's the issue, and that's the only major thing. And they'll work through that, right? Not having a training camp will struggle a little bit, but I don't think the RPO heavy system will be a major influence on them. I do think it's a great fit for Tua. And honestly, when you think about how questionable the pass protection could be, through this unit that they've added together, right? Because Flowers' strength was never being a dominant pass protector. Jackson, we talked about, is very raw, and that's not Robert Hunt's strength either. So the RPO system will actually benefit them, as it'll get the ball out of Tua's hands quickly, which is what he does best anyways, placing the ball accurately 8 to 15 yards down the field and putting a ball in Devontae Parker's hands, right? Albert Wilson's hands, Preston Williams' hands, someone who can get the ball and then move upfield. So that's going to be huge for them. And it's going to be very helpful. So I think if you're talking about the RPO, it's not necessarily a learning curve, but it's actually going to help the offensive line do well more consistently because it's so quickly out of the hands.
So I know it's not going to be as big of a learning curve for veterans because they've been up here. They're used to the speed. They're acclimated to how the NFL game works. How is that going to work for rookies who are just trying to get up to speed, to the game speed, let alone, I always tell people the hardest positions for me to learn on the football field are quarterback and the offensive line. I don't care what anyone tells me. Those are the hardest ones to master, right?
I would say cornerback is definitely up there as well, but I do think that offensive line, because what people don't prepare you for, right, is on, your first game, right? We haven't gotten the schedule yet, but there's a legitimate chance that the first game, I don't know what divisions the Dolphins play, but maybe you're against a Von Miller, right? If they're playing the Dolphins and that's your first snap as Robert Hunt, that's going to be a major struggle. So
we're playing the 49ers this year, brother.
Yeah, exactly. A Nick Bosa, right? There are some major concerns. Austin Jackson versus Nick Bosa just isn't there. So that's where the growing pains are. And that's why I do think that the offense line, because it's not necessarily, as a wide receiver, you get moved all over the field. If you're the left tackle, you're the left tackle. Right, you're going to be against that guy all game 24/7, regardless of who it is. So that's where I think the struggle of an offensive lineman kind of comes in. Again, I don't think the scheme plays super heavy into it. Luckily for offensive linemen, quarterbacks is a struggle because quarterbacks have to know everything, right? They have to know protection, they have to know alignment, they have to know route concepts, they have to know combinations, and they have to be analyzing the defense. For an offensive line, it's a lot simpler, luckily, because they are going against that one person constantly. So I don't think that the learning curve is quite so tremendous as a quarterback. It's just the competition that grows immensely. right? You see Austin Jackson, the best defensive end he was facing was maybe a Bradley Anae out of
He
Utah,
got
which he had a
18,
pretty good game as well.
I'm pretty sure Anai.
Anae crushed him on like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
There were some brutal ones.
And Aquara got him pretty good
Yeah.
too, and Epinesa got him pretty good too, right?
I don't remember the Iowa game, but there were but that's what I'm saying, right? Like you're talking about Bradley and I was a 5th-round pick, Core was like a 3rd-round pick.
But you put it on the injury because I'm just telling you right now.
I still think that
fans are going to say Dolphin fans are going to say, "Oh well, the bone marrow." So I'm just asking you
again. I don't think that, and even if you are, that makes the question of not drafting Lucas Niang even more insurmountable. Mm-hmm. But because he also had an injury, and regardless, I do think that Austin Jackson has put on good tape, but there is major concerns on his development and where he's at right now, right? Yes, his upside is there, but is he ready to be an NFL player right now?
Mm-hmm. So, Yawa asks, who would you be your starting 5 for the Miami offensive line right now?
If I'm not playing Tua at all this year, I would probably play Austin Jackson at left tackle, Eric Flowers at right tackle, Ted Krass at center. Maybe Solomon Kinley at right guard, although I think Shaq Calhoun will have a good chance to compete there as well. And then probably Robert Hunt at right tackle because they didn't actually take a right tackle. Because honestly, I really don't think Jesse Davis should be starting on an NFL team.
So what do you think? What do you think we fortified the most on the offensive line in this offseason? The guard position?
Yeah, probably the guard, specifically left guard, right? Eric Flowers, Michael Dieter, and Solomon Kinley all played left guard for the majority of their careers. So if you look at just the experience with left guard, I think that's kind of where you're talking about your strength.
Do you think Dieter's getting squeezed out soon if he can't play at center? Will he get buried on the depth chart?
Yeah, I don't. My guess is that he probably doesn't start this year. I don't see a way he's going to beat out Calhoun or Kinley for that right guard spot. So I'd imagine he's probably stuck as being a perennial backup.
Dwayne asks, is it more difficult to go from tackle to guard or guard to tackle?
Guard to tackle, 100%, I think, because you're in guard, you've got an enclosed amount of space. To your right, you have if you're playing left guard, to your right, you have your center. To your left, you have your tackle, vice versa for the right guard spot, right? You have, I think the only difference is now it's 2 very different things. In the guard, you're dealing with a lot more power and a lot heavier players. But from guard to tackle, you've now opened up an entirety half of the field that you now have to protect. So I think that's the big difference. For a guard, even if you mess up, typically you have someone on either side of you to help out. Tackles don't. Tackles are typically on an island. So
give me your thoughts, because, I mean, you've briefly discussed it, but give me your thoughts overall on the Tua Tagovailoa pick and Tua at the next level, what you think or what you project for him.
If they let him sit and he's 100%. Now, even if I would wait. I think as all quarterbacks, half of their success is dependent on their situation. So the Dolphins have to put Tua in a situation to succeed. I'm not super comfortable with where their offensive line is right now. And I would look to add, and even if they're losing a bunch of games this year, as long as Brian Flores knows that he's going to be on this team next year, I'm okay letting Tua sit. And even if you're not tanking, but even if you're losing games, it's okay, because if you're picking 2nd or 3rd next year and you get a Penei Sewell, you plug him at right tackle, now I'm so comfortable playing Tua there. I think they have the weapons, right? Mike Gesicki should take another step forward. Devontae Parker developed really, really well into a true number 1 receiver after a lot of us were waiting for that, right? Albert Wilson comes back from injury. Preston Williams is developing. I do think that as long as you can surround him with quality players, specifically an offensive line that can protect him, because that's huge, because the injury history was the major red flag, I think Tua can be a great quarterback. Now, I was not super high on this quarterback class overall. I thought that Burrow had some flags in terms of how good he can be at the next level, just because a lot of his splash plays that you saw aren't going to fly in the NFL. And I also think he lacked great physical abilities. I think Tua, with the injury history, I also think he lacks next level arm strength. He's a bit smaller, but I really don't care about height anymore. I think Justin Herbert had all the physical traits that you want to see in, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but did not have nearly the consistency that Burrow or Tua did, or the production. I also think Oregon's system hurt him a little bit. So I don't think Tua ever develops into a top 5 quarterback. Can he? Probably. Like, is the talent there? I'm never going to say it's not. But in my eyes, I think when you're talking about a best case scenario for Tua, we're talking a guy for his career is going to be a top 5 to 10, and this is best case scenario, top, right on that edge of the top 3, maybe the 4th, 5th best quarterback in the NFL, consistently making Pro Bowls, consistently taking the Dolphins to the playoffs and contending for Super Bowls. And the worst case scenario, you're talking, the injuries are just always staying with him. Unfortunately, he can't get over it. And you're looking to draft another quarterback in the next couple of years.
Do you think the injuries are going to be an issue at the next level? Because, look at, Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson, even CJ Mosley had a similar injury with the hip. Mm-hmm. Guys who had major injuries or were considered prone to injury or injury prone at the college level who didn't really get injured till 8, 9, 10 years into their career at the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. But then you see guys like a Jordan Reed, right, who was constantly injured in his career, caused him to fall to the 3rd round, and he was never able. Like you saw the talent in the splashes, but he was never able to get over it either. There are concerns. To me, I'm not going to say that Tua will get hurt in the NFL because I think injuries are such an impossible thing to predict. Because like you said, he might never get hurt again. He might never miss another game again. But you just never know, especially with quarterbacks because their careers are so long. Tom Brady's been a model of consistency, but he had one year where he tore his ACL just because it's a freak thing. You never know. Mm-hmm. I do think that I tend to subscribe to the thought process that hurt players stay hurt, but it's also a situation you put him in, right? If Tua is not putting his body in a situation to get hit, if he's throwing, and again, if Tua throws the ball away against Texas A&M or whatever team they were playing when he breaks his hip, we're not even having this discussion. He might even, Tua might not even be a Miami Dolphin at this point. So that's the thing is, can he learn to protect himself? Mm-hmm. And can the Dolphins provide enough of a quality offensive line to protect him? So that's the major thing.
And right before I get back to some questions from people, I had to ask you because, the Herbert debate was really good. It was going on there for a bit with Dolphins fan. I was actually a Jordan Love guy.
Okay.
I see a lot of upside with that kid. If it's groomed and properly, the guy makes throws off platform that not many in this class could make. And I think if Easton and Herbert weren't in this class, you'd be talking potentially about Jordan Love having the strongest arm in the class, right? Mm-hmm. So who do you think went to the better situation? Herbert, who's probably going to beat Tyrod out pretty quickly, whether it's week 2, 3, 4, whatever, and he's basically going to be asked to be one read, learn as you go, or a guy like Love who's going to sit behind Rodgers for a year at least and kind of be groomed to what Matt LaFleur wants, but also watch and learn how Rodgers prepares, what he does in the quarterback room, et cetera, et cetera. In the long run, who do you think is going to have the more successful career, Justin Herbert or Jordan Love?
I don't know who's going to have the more successful career. And in terms of the situation they were put in, I think when you're looking strictly as a quarterback situation, Jordan Love is put in the better spot, right? Getting to sit behind someone like Aaron Rodgers is going to be huge, and we saw how well that worked out for Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. However, in my eyes, I 100% want to be on the Chargers 1,000 out of 1,000 times over the Packers. Right? Because if you see what the Packers have done with Aaron Rodgers throughout his career, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers for a couple of years there was one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. And they were only able to win one Super Bowl because the Packers have done such an awful job building around him, being competent with him, right? And if you look at their draft class this year, it's horrible, right? I can understand the Jordan Love pick I didn't have a problem with. Because if you say,
AJ Dillon pick?
That one I don't like, right? It doesn't make sense to me. I liked AJ Dillon as a player. I don't like the fit with Green Bay. It doesn't make sense to me. I think Aaron Jones is a very good running back. I think Jamal Williams is a very good running back. Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of issues where I'm just like, and honestly, I really didn't like any of the rest of the Packers picks. I thought last year they had a good draft, but I thought they reached for Rashawn Gary. There's a lot of things that I just don't think they've done well. I think their general manager is probably not very good. I like Matt LaFleur a little bit, but even I thought he was a bit of an early coaching hire. I thought it was a little early in his state as a coach. So my only concern is with Love. Yes, I would prefer Love behind Rodgers than Herbert behind Tyrod, right? But in terms of what I have seen the Chargers do as a franchise trying to go all in and win a Super Bowl versus what the Packers have done and just win, okay, well, we have Aaron Rodgers, just let Aaron Rodgers. That's my thing. I think the Chargers would be more willing to invest in Herbert and invest around Herbert than the Packers would be.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I really thought they were going to take a receiver. I know
I thought they should have taken a receiver.
I know they got Funchess, but I thought they were going to go receiver for sure.
Yeah, it just would have made sense to me.
Sharif, he wants to ask, can you explain zone blocking versus pro set play action faking from under center?
So zone blocking is a run blocking technique. Typically, it could be used in pass setting, but usually it just means that everyone's moving towards one direction and you pick up a guy who comes into your zone. That's typically what zone blocking means. Play action is a pass. Obviously, you're faking it to the running back, and then from there, it's acted as in a normal pass play. For linemen, it's pretty common. It can be a little bit similar. The difference is for zone blocking on a run play, especially for linemen, is you move up, right? If no one's in your zone, you move up to the second level to the linebackers. You don't do that on pass play because then you're flagged for an illegal man upfield. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that was a pretty good explanation. So Yawa asked, and I know we kind of went over this earlier when I asked, what's the first thing you look for in a starting left tackle?
I want for like frame doesn't matter to me. 6'3" to 6'6". I really don't care about that. I don't care about the arm length. It has to be the functional athletic ability. You can't be a sloppy athlete. And then after that, it's the technique and the consistency. That above all else, it's got to be the consistency.
What do you think of the Pete's Auto asked, what do you think of the Brandon Jones pick?
I wasn't as low on the Brandon Jones pick as some people were. I liked Brandon Jones. I think he's a quality, strong safety in the NFL. He's a little bit light to play around the box, but I think he's a good functional athlete, and if you can kind of access that ability, it'll be good. I think he fits Brian Flores, and I think he's a good replacement for Rashad Jones. He's a cheap replacement for Rashad Jones.
Dwayne asks, what is a scoop block?
I'm not sure I've heard this term. My guess would be if you're going through, so kind of like almost like a jet sweep, right? If something's coming on along and a offensive tackle has got an outside defensive end, it's the ability to get on the outside of the defensive end and prevent him from making the play.
Awesome. Pete's Auto asked, who's going to have the biggest impact, Strobridge or Curtis Weaver?
Weaver. I think Weaver, outside of Tua, was the best pick in the Dolphins draft class. My major issue with the Noah Benogany pick, the Robert Hunt pick, the Brandon Jones pick, the Raekwon Davis pick, is to me, outside of quarterback and offensive tackle, the biggest need the Dolphins had was pass rush, especially on the edge. Charles Harris and Taco Charlton aren't even on the team anymore. That goes to kind of tell you what happened of your past two defensive ends. I think Curtis Weaver instantly plugs in and plays. I think he's up, potentially an 8-sack as his rookie year kind of guy.
Wow, love it. Another guy who I was real high on early. And so a lot of the people who watch here were kind of informed on him. So a lot of people were excited when we took that pick. So looking at last year's line and the potential starting line you just mentioned, Matt, how much better do you see this year's O-line being?
I think the highs for this year's O-line will be tremendously higher, right? Like I think at times when you see the unit working together and playing their best football together, I think it'll be light years better. But I do also think that they're a lot more volatile of a unit. They're a lot younger. They're a lot more inexperienced. So you might see some of the pits, and you might see at times offensive line play that's even worse than it was last year. But that's what you get when you go young. That's what you get when you go with someone like an Austin Jackson with so much potential. So yes, at times the highs might be very, very good. The lows are also going to be there because that's what comes with growing.
I got to address someone here in the comments because they brought up Jordan Love against LSU and with me talking about Herbert, and I guess that person just looked at the stat line.
I thought Jordan Love had a good game against LSU.
Yeah, because and I'm just bringing up. I even had it. I was going to say to Latrell. I believe the guy's name is Latrell. You can go back and watch my big board because I actually specifically talk about the game. And I'll read it just right now if I can quickly, Matt.
Go ahead.
I said you have to look beyond the numbers at times because of that, with a perfect example being his game against LSU. The stat line would tell you he struggled 15 to 30, 130 yards, 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. But it's one of the more deceptive stat lines you'll ever see, as though they made up not of one. Love had 3 touchdown passes dropped by his receivers, including a perfect throw up the seam on a post route
to the tight end.
Dropped. And one of his interceptions was on his receiver not making the catch, and another one was a Hail Mary when they were down 42-6 on 3rd and long. So I really do think, you have to look deep. You have to actually watch the game, Latrell. You can't just look at the stat line with that. So what do you think our biggest needs going to be next year that you see kind of the holes getting plugged up? Is it going to be our running back to replace Breida, or do you think we could go off and go get, because we have the Houston pick too, right? Do you think we could go out and get a Jalen Waddle or a Devontae Smith, a comfortable target for Tua?
I learned this year that I could never predict who the Dolphins are going to draft outside of Tua, which was, kind of an obvious pick. So I couldn't tell you. If it's me, right, if I'm the GM, if I'm Chris Greer and I'm running the team, first thing I'm doing is I'm still addressing my pass rush. I'm taking a Gregory Rousseau because, I think we can all be realistic here. It's unlikely the Dolphins are pushing for a playoff spot this year. I would imagine they're still probably picking in the top 12 somewhere. That would be my guess. Mm-hmm. So if you can go get a guy like a Gregory Rousseau to kind of beef up that pass rush, I would also look. The safety class is very, very good. I want
Javon Holland, brother.
Love Javon Holland. Yeah. Great player. Caden Stearns would fit the team a lot as well. Yeah. So there are options here. But if I'm probably looking at an edge defender. And honestly, if they have a really, really rough season, right, they're winning 2-3 games and Penny Sewell's on the board, no brainer to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you shift Penei?
Right tackle. I think he's good enough too.
Yeah. He's so good. I was going to ask you, what do you think about sorry here, let me just get my thoughts back here. What do you think where do you think our O-line is going to be rated among the league? Like, Havoc says, I think we'll be lucky if we are between 20 and 25.
Yeah, I still think it's probably going to be one of the more inconsistent units, just because, again, they're so young, they're developing. Like I said, best case scenario, we're probably in the late teens, and that's if everything blends well together, and that means that they're going to go on a pretty good run of good football later in the year. Don't expect quality offensive line play right off the bat with this unit. It's not going to happen. But what you can expect is to see from week 1 to week 17 a tangible improvement, and that's what you want to see.
Mm-hmm. And just before I get to Fake Spike's question here, do you think because of the way the offensive line is right now that's giving even more reason to Tua probably not seeing much of the field at all in 2020?
I wouldn't play Tua if I'm the Dolphins. Now, that being said, nothing makes a team better than great quarterback play. So if come training camp, it's just obvious, like Ryan Fitzpatrick can't even contend with the thought process of starting Tua, then maybe you have to. But for the betterment of the franchise, you never want to start a player in a bad situation like that. And you saw it with a David Carr, right? You saw it with a Josh Rosen. Like, sometimes it's just, regardless of the talent of the player, if they don't have a chance to throw the ball, they're never going to be great.
Give me your thoughts on Josh Rosen.
I love Josh Rosen. Prior to this year, he was my highest quarterback I'd ever graded. I was really, really upset that he went, because the Cardinals to me were the worst situation of any of the rookie quarterbacks in his year. And he went from the worst situation in arguably all of the NFL to the Dolphins, who, despite winning 5 games, which is really impressive, and I think a testament to Brian Flores, I don't think is much of an exaggeration to say that they had the weakest roster, like the least talented roster in the NFL. Yes, they won 5 games, but that's just a testament to how much better Brian Flores is than Zach Taylor, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think that he got put in an awful situation in Arizona, traded to Miami, just got put in another terrible situation, which is really unfortunate. At this point, I think it's a David Carr situation. I don't think you see him rise from the ashes. I just kind of wonder that maybe that's it for him, which is really unfortunate. But I really, really did love Josh Rosen, the prospect.
Yeah, because do you feel like with each year he's just getting further behind? And I tell everyone here, the one thing you don't have in the NFL is time. Yeah. Time is not on your side, so it's a show and prove league. So you got to wonder if he's going to be designated to a career backup, right?
Yeah.
Fake Spike asks, does this make you go after Clowney? And
I think this is the best spot for Clowney.
Okay.
Me. Or you could even trade. Like, if I'm Miami, if I can trade Houston's first for Yannick Ngakoue and Jacksonville's second, like, I'm making that trade 1,000 out of 1,000 times. Just makes a ton of sense to me. You can also go get a Jadeveon Clowney. I think Ngakoue is just a better player. I'm not sure. I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is a phenomenal pass rusher. I think he's just kind of in a slightly above average pass rusher, but he's in contention for the best run defending edge rusher in the NFL, right? So he makes a lot of sense in Brian Flores' scheme. He's athletic enough to play that 3-4 outside linebacker and that nickel edge rusher. I do think it would make a ton of sense to bring in Jadeveon Clowney. And the Dolphins have dumb amounts of cap space, right? So it should be fine theoretically.
Mm-hmm. Maybe like a 1 to 2 year thing, right?
Yeah, but if you can get Ngakoue on like a 4-year deal and move back 15 spots, right? Because Jacksonville is going to be awful next year. They're in contention to pick first overall. So if you get their second round pick, Houston's probably making the playoffs next year. I mean, you're talking about the 20 to 25th pick for Ngakoue and the 35th pick max.
The scary thing, though, I mean, when me and my co-hosts look at Houston, and God forbid this happens because we don't wish it on anybody, they're a Tunsil or a Watson injury away from picking in the top 5.
They are. I mean, every team, right? Like if you look at the Ravens, they're probably a Lamar Jackson injury. If you look at the Chiefs, they're probably a Pat Mahomes injury from picking top 10. I do agree, but to me, Deshaun Watson, I don't think people understand this, is the third best quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, I agree. Top 3. I mean, he's on the short list of teams that if they had the number 1 pick, they wouldn't take Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly. 100%.
Right? Yeah.
So I think to me, Deshaun Watson is just too talented. I still think they make the playoffs. And they play in an awful division, right? They're competing with, like, the Titans are going to probably be pretty good next year, but they're not going to be nearly as good as they were last year. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville is awful. Jacksonville might be the worst team in the NFL next year. And then the Colts were not good last year. I don't know how much of an upgrade Phillip Rivers is going to be in that unit. It's a weird fit to me. Like, the idea of Phillip Rivers on the Colts makes sense, but pairing Phillip Rivers with what Frank Reich runs is a bit strange. Regardless, I do think that there's still an obvious path with Deshaun Watson to the Texans winning their division and probably winning a playoff game as well.
Do you think he resigns?
Deshaun Watson? Yeah. I hope not. I would. I mean, if I'm Deshaun Watson, Bill O'Brien was not meant to run an NFL team. I think that's painfully obvious. The Texans, to me, are in the worst. I would rather be a fan of about any other team than the Texans, just because I know that they're not going to win a Super Bowl as long as Bill O'Brien's there. And as long as Bill O'Brien's there, there's a shot Deshaun Watson doesn't stay there.
Yeah. Pete's Auto asks, what would you grade the Dolphins draft?
Again, I was really low on Austin Jackson, and I thought Noah Igbenogany. If you wanted a slot corner, I'm taking Jeff Gladney. If you wanted versatility, I'm taking Xavier McKinney, Grant Delpit, Antoine Winfield, Ashton Davis, right? To me, I probably would have given them a C+ just because I think there were better players available at the positions they selected.
Do you think we could have got Austin Jackson at 26? Yes,
but I do have a feeling that the NFL was a lot higher on Jackson than I was.
Okay, and me too, because I mean, Sith Lord Tato asks, how much will a potential shortened trade? This is a good question. Shortened training camp preseason hurt the development with the offensive line?
Yeah, it's going to hurt a ton, and I think it's not just the Dolphins, but it's teams all around the league, right? You're likely going to see, outside of like Chase Young, Jeff Okudah, right, the like very obvious elite rookies, you're going to see a lack of rookie production this year because they're not going to have time to grow. Because not only is training camp likely cut short, rookie minicamp might not happen. So then you're just throwing in rookies with these vets in training camp, and there's going to be some concern.
Who do you think is going to transition from our O-line rookies the quickest to the next level?
I think Robert Hunt's game is the most translatable. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing because I think he was a dominant run blocker and a subpar pass protector. I think that just moves to the NFL. I think he's going to be a very good run blocker in the NFL and a subpar pass protector, which isn't exactly what you want from your right tackle. So I think if he gets a chance to play guard, that's when you're going to see him be very much worth the 37th pick or whatever he was.
So tell me if I'm crazy.
Uh-huh.
I think Kayvon Thibodeau is way better than Russo. Am I wrong?
100%, easily. I don't think Gregory Russo is going to make my top 10 players as
he's so raw. Like, he's so raw.
Yeah. Kayvon Thibodeau is, to me, Chase Young level.
Yep.
Gregory Russo is probably the worst top edge rusher in the past couple of years. Like, I would take, going all the way back, I'm taking Chase Young over Gregory Russo 1,000 out of 1,000 times. Taking Nick Bosa over Gregory Russo 1,000 out of 1,000. So if you get to the year before Nick Bosa, Bradley Chubb, right, was the top guy. I'm taking Bradley Chubb before Gregory Russo right now. Could Gregory Russo develop? 100%, right? Then that's kind of what you're looking at. He's very, very raw, but he's a raw player that had like 13 and a half sacks. So if he can develop, he could be a top 5 talent 100%. But some people talk about him like he's a Chase Young level player, and he's not.
No, that's Thibodeau. Yeah, agree. Yeah. That Oregon, people are sleeping on how good that Oregon defense is going to be this year. I'm telling you right
now. And I think, to me, Javon Holland's a top 10 player next year. As of right now. Dude can do it all.
I mean, if you go to Draft Network, we have the 8th and 9th pick right now projected. And because it's a need and he's the only running back I see going in the first round. I actually had one where Panay slipped to me at 8, and I was like, okay, this is the most unrealistic thing ever. But
there's been some of the, and like at PFN, we have one. At times we can get a little unrealistic too.
It's just how it works, right?
Yeah, I've had people send me like certain, not from PFN, but from other places. I'm not going to drop names, but where like Trey Lance is making it to like the 4th, 5th round, and I'm just like, come on, guys.
I actually, you know what, brother? Hear me out. I don't think Trey Lance makes it past the Chicago Bears.
It depends. I have no idea where the Bears pick.
I think they have them at 13th right now, and I'm like,
I wouldn't. That. If I was a betting guy, and obviously it's a lot of projection, if Trey Lance has the year he had last year or something similar, I don't see him falling out of the top 10, right? It just, to me, Lawrence, Fields, Lance is better than Burrow, Tua, Herbert. And those 3 quarterbacks went top 6.
Well, I think, brother, when you add in Brock Purdy, Jamie Newman, and Tanner Morgan, I think the top 6 is far more deeper than the top 6 were this year, right?
Right. And right now, to me, if you look at 2020 versus 2020, and people usually hate this, but if you look at the 2021 draft compared to 2020, I think offensively, 2021 is better in every position down the board. Quarterback, I think everything except running back. So quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, interior offensive line are all better than 2020. And even a running back is going to have a potential. Like Kenneth Gainwell is my preseason RB1 out of Memphis. Dude is phenomenal. And that's a hot take, right? A lot of people love Travis Etienne. Yeah. A lot of people love Najee Harris. A lot of people love Chuba Hubbard. So I think there's even contention for the top 4 here. Now, top 4 in 2020 was really good, right? DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even Cam Akers, the top 5 were dominant. Yeah. So it is going to be hard, but I do think that 2021 got so many seniors back because Travis Etienne, Chuba Hubbard, Najee Harris were all seniors. Kylan Hill was a senior and he returned, right? All of them really, really improved the depth of 2021 that 2020 didn't have.
I got to watch this kid from Memphis because I haven't watched him yet.
Love him.
I'm going to get into him.
He led all running backs last year in receiving yards, and he still had like 1,200 rushing yards.
Whew. So what's your thoughts on Kirk Merritt? From Arkansas State. We got him as a UDFA, and a lot of people are high on him. He ran a 4.33. I think he has a recorded 49-inch vertical. A lot of people are really high on him being our slot guy. I don't know if you've watched any of them yet.
I haven't watched I know I've heard of him. I've had friends talk about him. I'm not entirely sure how he's going to do. I unfortunately haven't gotten to the film, but I do think that the Dolphins, Albert Wilson's a very underrated name that I think people, because of the injury, was an issue. But I think if he can get healthy, he'll be very good. Obviously, love Preston Williams and love Devontae Parker on the outside.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, I think Preston Williams could play a lot as a big slot on the inside in a Michael Thomas-esque role. I thought that's kind of where he was going to fit in anyways in the NFL. So I think he could do that as well.
What did you think of Preston's rookie season before the injury?
I don't think he was as good as like a Terry McLaurin or an AJ Brown, but I do think that he was producing quality, and I thought he looked good in preseason, and I thought he could have been a guy who, I think he would have been a top 5 rookie receiver, pretty obviously.
McLaurin was an absolute monster last year. McLaurin F1, right? So
yes.
Were you one of the Redskins fans, just going back to your fandom here, were you one of the Redskins guys that's saying, don't take Tua at 2, we're good on with Haskins right now?
Yeah, and to me, the reason was, like, if Burrow's there at 2, maybe. Tua's red flags, health-wise, didn't make a ton of sense to me. The Redskins don't have a great right tackle. They didn't have a left tackle at the time. So, to me, I just did not want Tua at 2. It didn't make sense to me. Also, Haskins showed a lot of development late in the year. If you're going to take a quarterback, I would have just let Haskins play a full 16-game season. If he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. That also means you're picking top 5 next year anyways, and you get one of Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And to me, the existence of Chase Young also goes into that. I would rather have Chase Young and like if I'm picking first overall next year because Dwayne Haskins sucked, give me Chase Young and Trevor Lawrence over just Tua 100 out of 100 times, right?
Yeah.
Give me Chase Young and Justin Fields over Tua most of the time, anyways. So
What do
that
you
was
think?
my thought.
What do you think of Justin Fields' games transitioning to the next level?
I think a lot of people are overrating him right now. I think a lot of people talk about him as if he's on the level of Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he is. I still think he's a top 10 prospect. Physical abilities are absolutely there. He's very willing to push the ball down the field, but he's very smart with the risks he takes. He only threw like 2 or 3 interceptions all year.
Yeah. He had one interception going into the playoffs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And then 2 against Clemson, I believe. But
yeah.
to me, it's.
And one of those was a ridiculous Isaiah Simmons coming from the single high perch all the way to the other end in like the blink of an eye, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think Justin Fields is probably better than as a prospect an unhealthy Tua, but again, impossible to project how injuries work out. Mm-hmm. And then give me Trey Lance over Justin Herbert.
Oh, for sure, 100.
Yeah, so I do think that the quarterback class, like I said, next year is probably a better fit anyway. So even if you need a quarterback next year with the top 3, give me Chase Young and one of those top 3 over taking a Tua at 2. It just made more sense to me.
And what's crazy is everyone was talking about how deep this receiver class is, and next year it's deeper,
it's
right?
filthy. Yeah, next year. And a lot of people talk about like Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is my wide receiver 3. So there's a lot of guys to like.
Who's your one?
Rondale Moore out of Purdue.
Purdue, yeah.
And then Jalen Waddle's my wide receiver 2.
Oh, yeah, you're high on Jalen Waddle, eh?
Yeah, I think Jalen Waddle is going to shock people this year. Playing behind, I mean, it really sucks that for his first 2 years, he's behind Ruggs, Judy, and Devontae Smith. Mm-hmm. But if you look, he's still averaging like 700 yards per season as a wide receiver 4. This year, moving in, he's either the wide receiver 1 or 2 behind Devontae Smith. He should have a dominant year this year.
And where do you have Alex Leatherwood next year?
I'm not sure. I haven't graded everyone yet, so obviously we'll get into it over summer. I'll add them to the list though.
Awesome. Well, we've reached the hour and a half mark. I don't want to take up any more of your time, brother. You've been so kind with it already, answering all these questions. And man, I appreciate you so much. And I know we were talking about the wide receiver and the running back, because I'm going to be doing wide receiver and running back shows like this in Offensive Outlook. And hey, if we talked about the running back show, if you're willing and able, would love to have you back on when we get around to that in the next couple of weeks, because you've been absolutely terrific. And I think a lot of the people in the comments are saying great things about the knowledge you've been dropping and the gems you've been giving these people. It's been awesome. But I just want to thank you so much for being here, brother. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me. It was awesome. It was a good time. I always love talking ball.
Yeah, man. And you know what you're talking about. So that's always a big thing. Yeah, man. We're going to get out of here, guys. It's been an hour and a half. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here, Matt?
If you could, guys, please follow me on Twitter at MV Scouting. I might get into a little bit of a friendly banter with some of you, depending on what happens, but I promise I'm always a good time. Check out my stuff at Pro Football Network. I'm currently in 2021 draft mode, releasing all of my 2021 positional rankings over the next couple of days. I'll also be ranking the top 25 offensive tackles and interior offensive linemen in the NFL here next week. And then go check out my podcast if you got some extra time. Me and my co-host Dalton, we talk about just the NFL draft and the NFL in general, not specific on any teams. We just try to give a little love to everybody.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, go check out bluechipscouting.com too, guys. They do great stuff over there. And honestly, when you go with the scouting community on Twitter, you guys, you, Dalton, and some of the other guys at Blue Chip, you guys are absolutely phenomenal at what you do. And I can't say how much I appreciate just your work on social media. It's awesome. And bro, I love your funny anecdotes too, though. They make me laugh, man. So
I try to keep it a little lighthearted. Some people take everything a little too serious. Sometimes people get real mad, but it is what it is, right? I try to keep it as lighthearted as possible.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm sure we'll be in contact soon. And again, man, I appreciate you so much for taking the time out to do this.
For sure. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, brother. Have a good one. All right, guys. I really hope you enjoyed our interview with Matt Valdovinos. Absolute terrific mind for the game. I really hope you guys took away some knowledge and some insight from this. I'm probably going to try and get him back here for our running back one when we do our running back outlook. I really think he'd be great at doing that too. So, guys, we will be back on Friday night. I'll let you guys know the start time on social media, Twitter. Go follow me at _real_reason. And then, or follow us at Phinside the NFL, and we'll have the update of what time we'll be going live on Friday night. That show is going to be about EM should be joining us for that show, and that show is going to be about the players who have been put on notice after free agency in the draft. I know Dwayne said that he's gonna come backstage and he's gonna come on at one point, because after me and EM go over the players that we've listed, we're gonna bring all of you guys on. You guys are going to be able to go over players that either we've talked about, players we haven't mentioned, or just your generalized thoughts on who is really on notice and who should be looking over their shoulder come training camp, OTAs, etc. Guys, I can't tell you enough. I think we peaked at about 115 in the room tonight. I thank you guys so much. I know we did it a little bit earlier than usual. I know I didn't have my usual co-host. Miss you, bro. EM, holla at me. But much love, guys. I see all of you in the comments. Sith Lord, George, Havoc, Fake Spike. I'm actually going to Fake Spike now that I see you. I'm going to get to a donation we had at the end of the last show, so I didn't get to shout it out. But I believe it was Fake Spike. Yeah, it was Fake Spike. He made a quite generous donation of $33. This was during the Don Shula show, guys. And he said, RIP Don Shula. We love you, coach. $33 for 33 years of coaching. Man, we appreciate you and everything you do, Fake Spike, for this channel and your constant support. Guys, if you want to support the channel, no pressure. Feel free. Until we get up to 1,000 subscribers, I won't be able to open up the super chat. So there's the link if you guys want to donate. No pressure at all. The money just goes strictly towards running and operating this channel in terms of graphics and StreamYard. But guys, I appreciate all of you so much for taking the time out of your day, whether it's an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, just to listen to us talk football and talk Miami Dolphins football. It's a dream come true for me. It's something I've always wanted to do, something I've always been pushed to. And because you guys out there, you're pushing me to be better, and you're pushing me to go reach out to these scouts and to bring them on and to kind of educate myself as well as all of you guys. So I thank you all for just making me a better football fan, because without you guys, I wouldn't be going out and interacting with all these people. So thank you very much for pushing me to be better as a content creator. So you hear my daughter in the background, I'm sure, right now. But guys, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you all so much again. Fins up, you know the deal. And guys, we will see you Friday night. I believe TD has a show tomorrow night, so go ahead and tune into that. Have a good night, guys. Stay healthy. Stay blessed. Fins up, baby. We're out.